Everyone, and welcome to Build Your Brand. Now, today we are going to talk about how professionals can use live streaming effectively, and I have a very special guest with me, Mark. But before we get into all the amazing things that Mark has been doing with live streaming, I want to quickly thank Ecamm for sponsoring this live stream. It's what we're using right now, it's what both myself and Mark use to reach our audiences. Mark, could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sh- Sure, you bet. So, I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer. I live in the beautiful province of Alberta, Canada, and I have been practicing immigration law for probably 17, 18 years. I'm currently the national chair of the Canadian Bar Association's immigration section. So, I try to herd all of the immigration lawyer cats around who that's pretty much what it's like. Everybody's got their own views on the world, and so right now I interact with the government, and it's been quite an interesting time during COVID. But that's my day job, and then in the side hustle, I guess, if you will, is another entity that I call the Canadian Immigration Institute, which is where I have all my online courses and I teach people about how to do their own applications, and that's what pushed me to Ecamm.
Oh, interesting. So it sounds like you are working on a bunch of different projects that relate to obviously your profession. I'd love to hear more about how you got started with live streaming and why you decided to jump into live streaming.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy. It's amplification of the message. So I knew right away that teaching people in the whole world of content marketing was the direction that I wanted to go. And like most people, about 6 years, 6 years ago now, 2014, 2015, I started podcasting, and that was wonderful. And then I started toying with the idea of courses, DIY courses for immigration, and you need a place to kind of house them. And so, there's the online platforms that I used, but getting the message out and being able to amplify. I started with a private Facebook group. I've got one that's about 130,000 people now. But in the beginning, I could answer everyone's question. But then I realized very shortly that it didn't take me long to realize that, maybe three or four people were actually seeing the answer. So I needed to figure out a way to leverage what I was doing. So then I started Facebook Live, and then I discovered Ecamm, and that allowed me to answer one question that benefited thousands of people, and that's what got me into live streaming. I realized that if I had a weekly live Q&A live stream, that it allowed me to get my message out. The whole world of social proofing, and there's nothing more powerful for an immigration lawyer to let people know that you know what you're talking about than have people post questions and answer them live right on the spot. So that's what got everything started for me.
Amazing, and I think that's one of the great things about doing live streaming in general is being able to engage directly with your audience. In fact, this is a great time for me to mention that anyone who is watching this, feel free to drop questions for myself or Mark on live streaming. If you have any questions about getting started or using Ecamm or in general connecting with your audience. Now, Mark, you have such a specific and cool and interesting audience.
Yeah.
I'd like you to talk more about how you decided on who you would target for your live streams because it's not just a broad live stream to everyone.
Yeah. So obviously, individuals that are looking to immigrate to Canada, with a broad stroke, that was the initial people that I started to target. There are certain DIYers that are really trying to figure things out on their own. They're searching the internet, but there really were not a lot of places that they could trust the information. So the individuals I target are, people that have what I call really high human capital. So really good language skills and education and work experience. And they're not too old. In fact, you pretty much can't be much older than 29 if you really want to have a shot of immigrating directly to Canada without some connection, like going to school or work. So that was the real niche market that I was targeting to, and it was perfect because they're already searching online, and so I just inserted myself in a way that very few immigration lawyers are doing. So that's my little small cohort. But the interesting part is it's global, so it's not just one particular country. So it's a small little group, but they're in every country looking to come to Canada. So
And you're primarily streaming onto Facebook because you talked about this great Facebook group that you curated, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Everything evolves, right, Goldie? You start doing one thing and then you discover, hey, there's something that might work a little bit better. So it all started with this private Facebook group. And then I realized no one could share the videos outside of the group unless they were a member. And every person that's in there was, it's a private group. And so
Right.
then I started to post all of the videos in the page, the Facebook page. And then I discovered Restream, which allowed me to post all of the live streams simultaneously on YouTube, Facebook, the page, and the group. And so that's kind of how it's evolved. And now it's interesting. It's almost transformed now, where the YouTube channel is probably where I get about, I'd say, 70% of my clients, and then Facebook is 30, at least from the social world. I used to even broadcast out to Periscope before it shut down, and I'd get a few people that would even tune in from Periscope. But I'm
What's so
trying to
funny
get on
about that is
LinkedIn.
I'm actually still streaming to Twitter Periscope technically right now. So this is
Yeah.
live on Twitter.
Yeah.
I am just doing it until its very last breath,
Yep.
because I know that my Twitter audience loves seeing these. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping, Twitter, if you're listening out there,
Yeah.
please continue to give us an option to live stream using programs
Yeah.
like this to Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Amazing. So, as you were reaching out and reaching these audiences, I also like what you said about suddenly you realize that you were reaching more of an audience on YouTube. Did you decide to tailor or change your content or your style at all to accommodate the fact that it was doing better on YouTube?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good question. So as a lawyer, people give me a lot of they cut me a lot of slack, right? So they know that I'm not, really, really well versed in all of the nuances of getting viewed. So all I do is produce awesome content. So what I'm teaching is things that really people would be paying for, high fees to a lawyer. And so I've been given a little bit of time to get up to speed with what works and what doesn't. And clearly, with all my live streaming, it's consistency. And so I've made sure that I've been really consistent with, everybody knows when I'm going to go live. And so that helps a lot. And then they share it. So there's a lot of organic sharing that goes on. But in terms of the content itself, yeah, I've experimented with all kinds of things, bringing guests on. YouTube, it's like get their attention fast.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the first 5 seconds I've made changes to make it a little bit more attractive. But it's interesting. I allow, by and large, organic growth, the sharing to allow the channels to grow. And there's lots of things that I obviously need to do to improve and get better. We all do that. We're constantly trying to do things better. But from the standpoint of the content, there wasn't a significant difference between how I did things on Facebook. I think over time I realized that people like to see me in a suit, and they connected that with a professional. And
Right.
I experimented with backgrounds, green screens, broadcasting from Cairo, and people would choose backgrounds, but it tended to put me into a demographic, or at least people would make judgments about me. Well, this person must not be a lawyer; he's having too much fun. So I realized that I could still be fun,
Yes.
but just wear a suit, and then people will assume that, well, they'll make the connection that, yes, I'm an immigration lawyer. I'm not some consultant or someone who's immigrated to Canada and has my own channel. So that's one thing that has evolved because of YouTube, and it's been astronomical growth since that time. So it's amazing. You figure it out
So
what works, and then
really,
you run with
one
it.
of the pieces I want to pull out, Mark, from what you just said is thinking about how you present yourself on camera and having a nice unified image. So
Mhm.
people will expect you to show up in a certain way, and I personally believe that's very comforting. You see people say who always wear a red t-shirt on camera. I personally have green hair, so everyone expects
Mhm.
me to have green hair on camera, and I do. But having, I think, a suit for a lawyer, for a professional, makes a ton of sense. And in fact, for all of you amazing professionals out there who are thinking about getting into live streaming and you want to make sure that you look extra professional on camera,
Professional.
a buttoned up shirt or a blazer, etc. All of these ways that we signal that we're professionals in the workplace are helpful to use when we're doing something like a live stream, even though we might be doing them from, say, our home office.
Exactly.
So we have our first question It's a little bit broad, but it's from Gungeon. Mark, what is the hottest digital tech right now?
Hmm. Hottest digital tech? That's a good question. You know, one of the things that I've realized is that my just when it comes to Macs themselves, okay, for me, there's Ecamm, all the software associated with it, but I never seem to be able to keep up with my MacBook. And so whether it's iMac, whether I use my Mac, like right now I'm working off of my MacBook, but I've already ordered, the M1 iMac, and I'm really excited for that to come because very quickly when you're live streaming, space becomes a massive issue. And constantly I'm fighting with, okay, what do I do with all of this video content? I don't want to leave it all up on, in the cloud or on whatever platform. I need to have it locally. But
Right.
those are some of the things in terms of tech. Like for me, that's the one thing I'm fixated with is the M1s and the Mac platform. And obviously to do Ecamm, you need to have a Mac. And I haven't heard any recent change about them, arms. But for me, that's the thing that really drives the ship for me. But there's all kinds of cool things that are coming out. But really for me, it's the base. What is your
Yes.
foundation?
I think that's very smart too, because if you are live streaming as much as you and I both are, it's helpful to know, first of all, where all your content is stored,
Yeah.
and having a great place to store it in the cloud. But also, if you need easy access for yourself, for your editor who might be working on social pieces for you, smaller pieces to put on your social platforms, it's helpful to have a hard drive version, or have it on your computer. And unfortunately, as much as I love the MacBook Air, you can't do that on
No,
something
no.
like the MacBook Air. Oh, great.
Yeah.
We have another question from Peter. How did you get started and how do you advertise your live streams, Mark?
Awesome. So it was really slow. Remember, content marketing is farming, it's not hunting. You are planting seeds. So it's been 5 years in the making. And I'm not concerned. I share everything that I do, all my trade secrets with every lawyer that I talk to. But I'm never concerned about them doing what I'm doing because no one would be crazy enough to spend the amount of time that I did without an expectation of immediate return.
Right.
And when I started the private Facebook group, I also built a DIY course associated with it. So the course was the offering. People could book a consult. They could hire me as their lawyer, but it was planting those initial seeds. The group started with 100 people, right? And so that's where everything started. But I went in 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, answering everyone's question. And then they didn't even know I was a lawyer. I did not even say that I was a lawyer initially. It was just this helpful guy who was giving information who started this channel. And then from there, I just allowed it to build. And then it's like fruit farming. It's like you have cherry trees and you plant these saplings, and when they grow, it may be 2 or 3 seasons before you actually see the fruit. But once those trees are grown, then they just produce and produce. And so that's how it started for me. So I don't pay for advertising. It's all been organic. And when you produce really helpful content that other people are not producing, then it's very easy to see it share and amplify across the social channels. So,
So we have so many more questions. I'm going to pull another one from Alita.
sure.
Excellent insights. Thank you, Goldie. Any tech equipment recommendations for PC? Now, I am obviously, because I'm using I'm using a MacBook Pro to stream right
Yeah.
now, but I will give you some recommendations for universal products that work. In fact, right before this live stream, Mark and I were talking about some of our equipment. I know that both Mark and myself use Rode microphones. So
Yep.
thank you,
There
Mark,
it
for
is.
showing yours.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm using my regular headphones right now, but I also have a standalone mic, as well. And because I love doing this on camera, because it absolutely messes with my lighting, I have two circle lights, and it's very helpful to have good lighting regardless of what your setup is. And Mark, it looks like you probably also have a good
Yeah.
lighting setup
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah, I've got lights that I can control right here. And yeah, all the warmth and everything is all based right off of a remote. And I've got some other little accent lights and things, and it's amazing, you know,
Yep.
when the technology is there, it's not expensive, and if you're willing to spend just a little bit, and especially that camera, right, that you're looking at, and when you've got that nice 4K view and nice lighting, yeah, you can look good pretty much anywhere with just minimal backdrop. And you can't really see all my backdrop and everything, but yeah, that's me.
And I think that's so helpful to think about. So, in the last live stream with podcasters, we talked obviously about having the best kind of audio, which is very helpful. But definitely, when you are visual, when you're making videos, having the right kind of lighting is so helpful, because I've seen so many people, as I'm sure Mark you have too, because you're working with lawyers who don't necessarily invest in this kind of equipment. I've seen so many people where it's literally they're just completely dark, and
Yeah.
yet somehow the background is light. And so you want to make sure that you avoid that, invest in good lighting. I always say first it's sound, then it's lighting. So those are kind of the two places to focus in on. In fact, somebody just asked, what is the name of the microphone and light? So Mark, I'll let you go first. What is the name
Yeah.
of the microphone and lights that you use?
Yeah, so the mic that I use is the Heil PR40, and I've been using this mic for probably 6 years, and I was a podcaster, and my audio actually goes through my Rodecaster, so I have that as well. And my dilemma right now, Goldie, is that I'm not sure what to do with my podcast. I love doing this so much. Do I strip the audio away from my videos and put it on the podcast, or do I just have a separate playlist on my YouTube channel that's the Canadian Immigration Podcast, because it's very successful and it's people love to listen when they're driving. You
Right.
can multitask with the podcast. And so I use this mic has been my bread and butter for years and years. And then for my camera, I use a Panasonic G7. Like, there's nothing fancy about it, 4K, and you can see I've got a nice little lens here that blurs the background, and then I use trying to remember what they're called, but I've got two square lights that I can adjust. And I feel a little bit sad because I'm a lawyer, you guys. I'm not a tech. I know what works, and
I feel like they're
I've taken
probably
tons of
let's
courses.
throw that technical name out there for them. So they're probably two softbox lights that you
Yeah,
have. Um,
yeah, yeah. And these ones actually aren't the softbox. Give me a second. We can do whatever we want on this channel. Give me a second.
Absolutely. And I love this. And this is how you know we are 100% doing this live right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, they're Viltrox is what I have.
Field trucks,
Yeah,
beautiful.
they're Viltrox. Yeah, they're Viltrox, and they're adjustable. I can adjust the warmth. I can adjust the brightness, and I've got two, and they're pretty high because usually I wear glasses. And before I had them too low, and you'll see right away people who don't have their
You
lighting
have the
aligned
glare.
right, you can see the glare in their glasses. So I had to raise them up and I've got lots of different stands and everything to get everything queued up. But yeah, there's so many different ways. Lots of people to help you get your
And
system
that's
set up.
definitely something to think about too. Is so I have a small circle light that lives on the left side of my face because I have natural lighting also. So I don't need quite a big light. And then on my
Yeah.
right side, I have my heavy duty giant circle light. And it's how I get these double circles in my eyes whenever I am doing a live stream. And I'll be brutally honest with you, I have a nicer camera, and also I have a very fancy microphone, but I am using my Apple headphones right now. I am using the camera directly on my MacBook Pro. I like to do this because I like to show people you can do great looking
Yeah.
live streams with minimal equipment.
Mhm. I'm glad you brought that up, Goldie, because when I started, for the first 2 to 3 years, actually probably almost 4 years, my camera was the camera on my iMac, the HD 720, right? And so it was not great, and I could see that, wow, my image is not nearly as clear as Goldie's. And then slowly I said, okay, I've got to take the next step. But you know what? The channel still grew because of the content,
Mhm.
and people were still very, very interested because of the quality of the content. So you've got a lot of people who've got fancy cameras, fancy lights, and their content just doesn't carry any weight. And so it
That
goes
is
both.
such a politically correct and lovely way to put it. I will say sometimes people's content is a little bit rubbish. So we want to
Yes,
make
yes.
sure that content has one of my favorite or S words, substance. If
Substance.
your
Yeah.
content has substance and it helps people, it's educational and entertaining. And of course, entertaining means a lot of different things to different audiences. So, obviously, in the YouTube world, it might mean something a lot flashier.
Yeah.
But in the LinkedIn world, it might mean simply having two very engaged people talking about something that is very interesting. So, making sure that you are giving substance to your content will help, honestly, more than investing in $5,000 worth of equipment right at the start.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
Beautiful. So, one more question from the audience. Peter says, when you first started, what was the audience size of your early meetings? I'm going to assume your early live streams, your very first live streams. How many people did you
Yeah.
have tuning in, Mark?
Yeah. Well, like anything, you need before you just go live. It's good to have. I had another group, right? So I had through my podcast and through the private Facebook group and just that answering questions. So I've curated a little bit of a following. So I didn't jump just straight into live streaming without a following, but still, I would say the first ones were maybe 30 or 40 people. And then from there, I was just telling Goldie, I'm not anywhere near where she's at. But as an immigration lawyer, not everybody in the world really cares what I have to say. It's a very, very small little group. And so I had about 1,200 people that were watching live. And for me, that's fabulous. It's spectacular because they're hanging around for a full hour listening to what I have to say. But it took time, and it's consistency and persistence, and don't expect it right away. You'll be amazed. You'll hit the sweet spot, something will happen, and then you'll just be elevated into the mainstream. And that's kind of how it happens. Well, maybe a year or more, you'll be, in relative obscurity, but then you'll kind of figure things out and something will catch, and then boom, and then it will take off for you.
I really like the idea of consistency, another great word. So let's throw these two words out there when we're thinking about live streaming for professionals: consistency and substance. So
Substance.
showing up over and over, even if you only say have one person watching your stream for a while, and then making sure though that that stream has substance so they want to come back and keep listening to the great information that
Mhm.
you're sharing with them.
Yeah. And they tell their friends,
And they tell
right?
their
And
friends.
yeah, that's the beautiful part of it. Now, when I did start with my private Facebook group, I did seed in about $1,000 of Facebook ads to just get a little bit of traffic momentum because you need some individuals there. You need to
Yes.
get started. And so I did that at the very, very beginning. I already knew who that target was. So it wasn't just kind of I'll just throw 1,000 cares about what I want to say. But if you have a good plan and you stick to it in consistency and you're willing to adapt and to change, it can work.
Yes, and I like that you brought up that you did use $100, which is nothing,
Yep.
right, in the world of
Yep.
ads to
Yep.
really boost your Facebook lives to start. So that is a great pro tip for folks who are looking to do Facebook lives for the first time, is if you know your target audience, with which Mark clarified before he even began. I want to throw that out there. Is Mark knew who he wanted to talk to, and that also helped with the live stream because people knew it would be about a very specific subject matter, and that's so helpful for live streams.
It makes it a lot easier to separate yourself from the crowd. And for me, think of anyone who's in a knowledge-based business, and most of us professionals are. What we sell is our knowledge. And so when you have a situation where you're literally giving away everything for free, wow, like it's completely counterintuitive. But in the end, what happens is people recognize you as a leader in your field,
Mm-hmm.
and they start to know you, they start to like you, and they start to trust you. And
I
then
love that
after that,
word. Let's do that. It's our third word: trust.
yeah, And then when they trust you and they know that you're not just there, you're genuinely there to help them, not just to promote something, then yeah, when you do promote it, they'll be there. And that's what I found.
Amazing. So, Mark, can you give some last minute advice to professionals who want to get into live streaming but maybe think it's a little scary or daunting to join this scene?
Yeah, I think it's the same probably response many of your guests would give. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid for your first videos to be imperfect, to be a little, a little rough around the edges. That's okay. Because when you mess up, when you move away from the camera or you forget something and or your child comes to the door and says dad, and don't worry about those things. They resonate with people. They're not expecting you to have this slick perfect feed. They want to see that you're a real person just like them, and that's how you build the relationship. And so don't be afraid to just dive in and just do it, and the more you do it, the better you'll get. And right now is just an amazingly perfect time to do it, because everybody's is in this virtual world. Everybody is having to have online meetings, and they know that how hard it is, and there's a lot more forgiveness to jump in now than, let's say, a couple years down the road. They're going to expect that if you have something out there that it's really looks professional. So it's a perfect time to connect and get active Ecamm. And boy, it makes your life so easy. And I use everything from, I've got, I'm going to lose my light here, but I've got, I use Stream Deck, and I think everybody can see that. I use Stream Deck. I use a whole bunch of other things, and I'm like a one-person show. And so it's awesome. Ecamm has really been a game changer for me. And yeah, and I can say that without any compensation coming my way.
Amazing. And Ecamm is really wonderful. In fact, I'd like to thank Ecamm one more time for sponsoring this live stream, but also for being such a great partner for folks who are doing live streams. They really care about if you are successful, because the more successful you are in your live streams, just like we were talking about before with trust, the more you will recommend Ecamm, of course, to other people as well. So thank you again, Ecamm, and thank you, of course, to Mark for joining us today. Now, Mark, where can folks find your amazing content, courses, etc. online?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Go to the Canadian Immigration Institute. And when you search that, you'll find me. I have my law firm, Holthe Immigration Law, but everything kind of funnels in through the Canadian Immigration Institute. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all over. So that's probably the easiest way to track me down.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again to Mark for joining. Thank you everyone who tuned in, asked questions, and either is watching this live or is watching the replay. Feel free to drop more questions to myself and Mark, and I'll catch you on the next Build Your Brand. Bye, everyone.